And Mike's on. Welcome back to the Mike's On with College Football Podcast. Coming at you with week 3 of the college football slate. Going to give you our setup for the weekend, and this is how we're doing it. Going to give you guys a slate of about 12 to 15 games, plus a little bit of kind of fun things I found in the slate coming up this week. And with these games, I'm going to be playing either one of the teams, one side of the spread, and then as well as the over/under, or maybe I'll just be playing the over/under and maybe a little bit of the spread. So these aren't always games that maybe are good picks, like they aren't always going to be games that have good gambling lines, but they're going to be interesting regardless. So I kind of do the best of both worlds. Find a game that's interesting, but also give you my opinion on what, if I was going to bet on this, what I would take. So, starting off, Friday night, 7:30 p.m., we've got Florida State headed to Louisville. The line is Florida State by 2.5, and the over-under is 57. I am taking Florida State here, laying the 2.5 as well as the over. Here's what I think happens. Florida State attacks a weak run defense of Louisville with a play-action game that attacks the very blitz-heavy University of Louisville's run defense. They're really bad at stopping the run, and I watched a lot of their game against Central Florida the other week, and basically in the second half, how they stopped Central Florida from scoring. Now, Central Florida shot itself in the foot with some penalties on scoring possessions. But really what they did was they just blitzed every single time and left their corners and safeties on islands. I don't think that's going to go as well against Florida State with Jordan Travis, who is a much better quarterback than John Reese Plumlee of Central Florida, and as well as the athletes that Florida State has on the outside. So I think this goes over and Florida State covers. All right, again on Friday night, we've got a Mountain West showdown at 8 p.m. This is Air Force at Wyoming. We talked a little bit about Air Force on the Week 1 review. Air Force is becoming a darling team for me this year in the Group of 5. They really have a chance to go 12-0 and get into a New Year's Six Bowl this year. They're definitely the strongest academy in the country, as well as maybe the best Group of 5 team. Defense looked phenomenal against Colorado. Now everyone kind of does. However, against Wyoming, we've got Air Force. The line is 16.5, and the total points is 47. What I am taking here is the Wyoming first half team total under 7.5. I don't really like a triple option team. I've got to get 3 scores for Air Force to cover here, 17 points. And I don't really want to play with that 47 on the over-under. So I'm really liking that. I definitely think Air Force is going to come out and stifle Wyoming. Wyoming's offense is terrible. They only got 3 points in the first half against Illinois in week 0. And they've played some kind of garbage after that. They don't really have a good quarterback. Their offensive line is not great, and they struggle to run the ball. So I think Air Force comes out hot, controls the tempo, controls the ball, stifles Wyoming, and Wyoming doesn't get more than a touchdown in the first half. Going on into Saturday, we've got a big one at noon. Got a couple noon games to hit you guys with. We've got Oklahoma, Nebraska. Oklahoma goes to Nebraska. Now, Nebraska just fired their head coach, Scott Frost, after a loss at home to Georgia Southern last week. Oklahoma is favored by 11. Total points scored is expected to be 66. I'm taking Oklahoma in the over. I think OU is going to come out for blood against this extremely weakened Nebraska defense that has basically been a sieve. Georgia Southern installed the spread option offense this spring and summer and put up 45 on these guys. Oklahoma's been doing that for a little while longer. Oklahoma only scored 7 points in the first half last week against Kent State. I think they'll want to come out a lot stronger than that. I'm predicting a 50 burger here for the Oklahoma offense. I just need Nebraska to give me about 17. I understand there's a little bit of talk about how you get that kind of bounce from firing the head coach, the team rallies, all that. Maybe in the next game after this for Nebraska, but this game is not the game that I think they're going to rally and cover. Give me Oklahoma -11 and the over. Also at noon, University of Georgia is going to Columbia, South Carolina. Now, we've talked about the Cox a lot on this podcast, and that's because Spencer Rattler, their quarterback, has been a lot of fun to watch, give or take. He's been interesting to watch. UGA favored by 24.5, and the over-under set at 55. What I like here is Georgia over 20.5 points, first half team total. I think UGA is going to come out and stifle South Carolina early. South Carolina cannot run the ball. They have a terrible offensive line. I'm very sure South Carolina might come out and just play not to get blown out, and not lose by 40. So run the ball or not be try to spread it out as much on offense, because they don't have the defense to hold Georgia to probably below 30 points. So I think UGA comes out and sits on South Carolina. They get turnovers, especially if Spencer Rattler is forced to pass a lot, or if South Carolina is willing to pass. Here's it. If South Carolina comes out with a game plan that is more conservative, and they're just going to try to run this clock out and get this game over with by 3 o'clock, I still think Georgia can get 21 in the first half. Because I don't think South Carolina, if they're going to play that conservative, is going to move the ball past the 50. I think they're just going to punt. If South Carolina comes out and is more aggressive and is trying to pass early and spread the ball out and allow Spencer to just kind of throw them into a win here, I think that only helps the first half team total for UGA of an over 20.5. Then we're going to get a strip sack. We're going to get a pick. Like, it's only going to be bad for South Carolina if they come out and try to be aggressive. So either way they come out and play this game, I still think Georgia's going to get the 3 touchdowns they need in the first half. Let's take it to the last noon slate game. We've got Purdue at our darling Syracuse Orange. Gosh, this team has been great over the first 2 weeks of the season. Did not expect Syracuse to come out and be this competent on offense for the entirety of at all. I mean, just absolutely amazing for Syracuse to come out and be showing this amount of competency. I'm taking Q's here by 1.5. They're favored by 1.5, and the over-under is 60. I'm taking Syracuse and the over here. New look Syracuse runs strong over Purdue. They've got a great 1-2 punch with Garrett Schrader and Sean Taylor at quarterback and running back. Garrett Schrader's also passing for about 70%. This Purdue defense isn't anything to give you any concern about. I don't think Q's doesn't really stop, but Purdue doesn't either. Purdue actually has an offense that is more pass heavy. So even if Syracuse is kind of preventing Purdue from driving up the field, Purdue's still going to just keep doing it a lot, and they're not going to consume a lot of clock. So if Purdue doesn't score, their possessions are going to be small in amount of clock burned, giving Syracuse more time. And I think Syracuse would also like to really flex some muscle here. I think Dino Babers is on a bit of a warpath to show, yeah, I still got it here at Syracuse, and we're here to play. So I'm liking the over there, and Q's by 1.5. Could be a bit of a shootout too, which only helps the over. But just awesome to see the Orange getting such a strong start to the season so far. So now we get into the 2 o'clock, early afternoon slot time. I've got Cal and Notre Dame here. We're playing a 2:30 game. Notre Dame favored by 11, over-under is 41. Notre Dame coming off a really bad loss against Marshall at home last week. They lost their quarterback, Tyler Buckner, to a shoulder injury. They're now on new quarterback, Drew Pine, who, if you listen to the zeitgeist of college football like I do. Some people actually like him more than Tyler Buchner. From what I saw of Tyler Buchner against Marshall, I would say anybody is a lot better than what he was doing out there because he was just misreading defenses. The pick six was atrocious, as I talked about last time. So I really don't think Cal can score, though. Cal only put up 20 points against UNLV last week, who is a pretty bad defensive team. As we talk about UNLV in week 0, they're guns up blazing this year, but defensively, they're not it. So I don't think Cal can score much here. Probably under 14 points. Big gut check Saturday for Notre Dame. With a loss last week, new starter at quarterback. You gotta hope new head coach Marcus Freeman rallies the troops here, man. Like if Notre Dame comes out flat in this game, write it off. Because they got to travel to Chapel Hill the week after this, and it's that 0-4 start. Just sign the check right now. So if Notre Dame, I'm getting eyes on this early. If Notre Dame comes out soft, it's gonna get gross. I'm taking Notre Dame by 11 just because if they don't against this Cal team who has a pretty good defense, but offensively really struggles to get up and down the field. You gotta get this done, Notre Dame. Just get it done. We get into 3 o'clock and a really good game here. BYU goes to Oregon, 3 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be a noon kick local. Oregon favored by 3.5 and an over-under of 58. I like just the under here. So a really interesting thing that's going on with BYU. I talked about a little bit on the week 2 review. They have a schedule, if they go undefeated, could put them in the playoff, but they're also missing their top 2 receivers. Did a little bit of research on it. Gunnar Romney and Puka Nacua. Gunnar is out with a non-football injury, kind of like Sam Hartman was with Wake, and he's actually just waiting to get medically cleared, and Puka had an injured ankle from week 1. And both have been designated game time decisions from head coach Kalani Sitake. Hello, how you doing? So I'm going to take the under on the chance that either one of them doesn't play, or if they both play, they're probably limited. And I still don't think Kalani Sitake, BYU is inherently under Kalani Sitake been a bit of a conservative team, trying to really run the rock a lot and be just more of a conservative team. And I think Oregon, this is Oregon's second big game. Their first big game against Georgia, they got absolutely waxed. It was a deplorable showing for them. And I would expect new head coach Dan Lanning, this being his kind of first big home game, especially against a regional rival that is BYU, or at least regional team that people care about beating if you live in or Eugene, Oregon alumni. He's going to want to make sure he puts his team in the best position to win here, and I think that plays to the defensive strength of that football team. So I expect Oregon to go a little run heavy as well, especially trying to help out Bo Nix, their quarterback, who if you let the reins go on Bo Nix and just let him fly, the ball tends to end up in the other team's hands. So playing it closer to the vest might be in the best interest of maybe both coaches in this game. Give me the under. So we also have another game. This is a 3:30 kick, Penn State at Auburn, going into SEC territory here. Penn State favored by 3, over and under 47.5. I'm not sold on Penn State's offense yet. They have a good defense, and they have some great corner play. I'm taking Auburn, giving away points at home, and the under. I think this game ends in the low 20s for both teams. Auburn has a very good defense. They just got to find out some way to score the damn ball. But I don't trust Penn State to do much else either on offense. And Auburn has a pretty good defensive line, if not just a solid front 7. I think the rest of the team is a bit rough for Auburn. They do have a pretty good running back. So Just give me the under there. I'm going to take an SEC team. This is in Jordan-Hare for 3:30 local. It's going to be packed. It's going to be loud. At this point in the season, this is the most adversity Penn State will have seen all season in terms of an away crowd. So give me Auburn +3 and the under there. 4 o'clock, we go over to Houston, Kansas at Houston. Mike, why are we trying to look in at Kansas football? Because they're competent this year. They beat West Virginia last week, a double-digit win in overtime. How do you win by double digits in overtime? You pick six the other team when it's their turn to go at the bottom of the inning in overtime. We've got Houston favored by 8.58 as the over-under. I'm just taking the over here. Kansas is competent. I don't think they can really stop anybody, but by golly, they're going to score. And Houston doesn't really want to stop people at all this year so far through 2 games. They let UTSA get 35 on them. I mean, it was in the low 20s at end of regulation, but Texas Tech with their backup quarterback last week put up somewhere in the 30s, and they've played 2 overtime games. So I mean, if this game goes to overtime, let's ride. So I think this is a bit of a test to see how competent Kansas is. I do think they are competent, but this would only either prove or disprove that. As well as I think the Houston defense, I haven't seen it from them yet this year. They really can't stop the run. And if there's anything Lance Leipold and this Kansas team wants to do is run the ball. So I expect this game to be a bit of a shootout. But Houston could maybe prove it to everybody here and bow up and put Kansas in their place. But I like the over 58 here. 7 o'clock, back on the East Coast, NC State at home against Texas Tech. Prove it to me, Wolfpack. That ECU game was not it. Hey, get the rust off. First game back, wild environment down there in Greenville. I get it. Weren't really ready for the lights. Had a nice tune-up game last week against Charleston Southern. Put a 50-burger on the field. Everyone's happy. Everyone feels good. We're loose. Big 12 team coming off an overtime win at home is coming to town. Texas Tech also converted a fourth and a mile in order to tie it up in the second overtime and take it to a third. So, this team's riding really high. They're feeling themselves. I want State to crush some souls. NC State is favored by 10.5. The over-under is 56. I am taking the over here because I do think Texas Tech can actually score a little bit. So NC State might have to get up to about 30, 35 points here. But I'm taking NC State, laying the points, 10.5. Backup quarterback still for Texas Tech, and I want to see the offense cook a little bit for NC State. They got to score points to win this game. You are not going to beat this Texas Tech team scoring in the low 20s like you did against ECU. This Texas Tech team is going to pass the ball around, and NC State has not seen an offense like this since last season against Mississippi State, who's kind of who's strict air raid team. Texas Tech runs a modified air raid team. If you watched Western Kentucky last year with Bailey Zappi, their offensive coordinator is, I think his name was Zach Kittle. He is now at Texas Tech as the offensive coordinator, and he runs a very air raid based offense. So, NC State, score some points, play good enough defense, let Leary go out there and chuck it around, and let's show that week 1 was a complete anomaly. 7:30, we've got SMU going to Maryland. If you don't know anything about both these teams, just know that both teams like to score. And both teams score a good amount. Maryland is favored by 3, and the over-under is 73. If I ever find, when I'm doing these setups for the weekend, if I find anything, an over-under, that is in the 70s, it is going to make it on this sheet. Because that means points, and points are fun, and if college football isn't anything, it's got to at least be fun to watch. Get some eyes on this game. Keep it on in the background, and every time you glance over, someone's going to be scoring a touchdown. Now, 73 is a lot. We need both teams in the high 30s. I think we can get there. I'm taking the over. Why not? This game will have, I literally have in my show notes, this game will have points, and I want more. This will be a game, the gift that keeps on giving. Maryland can't stop anybody. SMU has not really played anyone of consequences as of late. They slaughtered a North Texas team who I don't think is that strong. North Texas really is stronger on the ground than anything else, but Maryland's got some good wide receivers. They've got a great quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa's brother. SMU has a fourth-year junior quarterback, Tanner Mordecai. Expect this game to be a lot of fun, a lot of points. Taking the over, 73. 7:30 as well. Big game out west. Michigan State at Washington. Washington favored by 3, over under 56.5. I'm taking the under here. I think this is going to play so much like a Big Ten game. Washington has looked pretty good in its first year with head coach. He was the Fresno State coach last year. We'll get to that. I'll remember. And Michigan State has played 2 MAC conference teams and put 40 to 50 points on both of them. What does that mean? And I don't know what it means. It doesn't tell me a lot. Washington has beat a MAC team too in Kent State and put 45 on them. I did catch some of that game, so they look competent. But both teams are going to be playing the best defense that both teams have seen in the first 2 weeks of the season. I'm taking the under here. I think both teams are going to come and just kind of get both punched in the mouth on offense. So I think this game could become a bit of a conservative, grindy Big Ten football kind of test. Taking the under, no play on who wins. I think this game could just be really grindy. It is in Washington, so if you're looking to pick there, I would favor Washington by 3, but I'm just taking the under and leaving it right there. 8 o'clock, UTSA at Texas. This game is at 8 o'clock. Texas favored by 12.5 points with over-under set at 59.5. I'm really looking to see how Texas can bounce back from the Bama game last week where they came back in a close loss, didn't really even come back, just almost beat Bama in a close loss. Is there a hangover effect here? Because there was a lot of chatter about, hey, they looked really good. They were down their starting quarterback. Hats off to Texas. They look great. A lot of pat on the back from the fan base. Do they come out a little flat? Because this is UTSA Super Bowl. I mean, UTSA played Houston in the opener. I thought they were going to win that. They went to overtime. Now they got at Texas. I mean, this is the biggest game on UTSA's schedule that won't be the conference championship if they make it there. So they're getting up for this, no doubt. And UTSA is pretty good at stopping the run so far. They held Army, who runs classic wishbone, flexbone triple option, to 3.5 yards a carry. Now, Army did throw it for 300 yards on them, so that's not great. But they damn well sure plugged the gaps in the run game. And if Texas is on their backup quarterback, Hudson Card, who had a bum ankle in the Bama game, he's probably, I've heard he's okay to go, but his mobility will definitely be in question at the beginning of this game. And I would assume that they're going to try to establish the run early with a great running back that they have in Bijan Robinson. So if UTSA can stifle the run game a bit, make Texas have to kind of get into a bit of a more passing mode, maybe get to the quarterback a bit, affect Hudson Card's, make him have to move a little bit. I'm taking UTSA plus 12.5. Texas might still win, but 12.5, I think, is a lot for a Texas team that, for me, still has more questions on, can they do it again? I mean, this has been the script for Texas football for the past 10 years. Was they get up for the big game. Bama comes into town. Wow, what a performance. Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. Great game. When you play the other opponents, though, they lose to Kansas. They're dropping to Texas Tech. This is an opportunity for a letdown spot. So I'm taking UTSA for the letdown, plus 12.5. All right. Getting further into the night slate here, we've got 2 more, plus I've got some LOL games just keep eyes on. Miami at Texas A&M. Texas A&M loses to App State last week. A lot of criticism on their head coach, Jimbo Fisher, in terms of how weak their offense was, as well as maybe his inability to shift on offense and facilitate an offense that makes points easier to come by. A&M is favored by 6.5. The over-under is 44.5. If you didn't watch last week, and we didn't talk about it, Miami went to the half up 10-7 against a Southern Miss team that lost to Liberty in the previous week and had to play Frank Gore Jr., a running back, at quarterback. Miami is a team on offense right now that is a bit discombobulated. The passing game is nowhere near where it needs to be, and the offensive line is not I wouldn't say is the strength of the offense either. They're just kind of decent. In the second half, they kind of just said, screw it, and started just pushing Southern Miss around and kind of pulled away from the passing game. A&M, if they have one thing at all, it's an excellent defense. And Miami, if they have one thing at all, is an excellent defense. I think this is going to be a game where both coaches play this super, super tight to the chest. I don't expect either of them trying to get risky. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of punts. We're going to see a lot of field position play. I don't think we're seeing any big shot plays. If anything, it's coming from Miami. Yeah, we're taking the under here. Under. If App State and A&M went under, this game's going under, man. Both teams good D, and both teams have a dysfunctional or non-functional offense. If A&M loses this game and starts 1-2 on the season, it's going to get real loud in College Station. And I mean real loud. And I can't wait. This is what college football is all about, man. About people who want to have the most influence in what their school does athletically. So what I'm really grabbing at is the boosters at A&M. If you don't know much about booster culture in college football, one, it's what does kind of drive the bus financially, especially in the past. Maybe not as much now because of all the TV money that a lot of schools get, but it's still quite there. Prime example, Wake Forest now has a complete indoor football complex being built called the McCreary Athletic Center. Bob McCreary was a quarterback for Wake Forest in like the late 60s, early 70s, and he pledged $20 million to have this thing built. Now that's on the small scale. If you ratchet up to the A&M level, I mean, you've got guys who were oil barons in the Texas landscape, big business owners, and it's not just one Bob McCreary. They've got 150 Bob McCrearys. So you imagine the jostling of position of all of those people where there really isn't a structure to kind of corral all that. It really is up to the athletic director, or maybe even the president of the university, to kind of balance the wants and ambition of your alumni base, who does give a lot of money to the school, not just for athletics, but for other things, as well as make them think they have input in supporting the school, making them think that they have maybe actual power in making change happen, but then also not giving them total control. Prime example, at the end of the 2019 season, Auburn fired its head coach. However, there was a coup that happened amongst the boosters at Auburn that essentially promoted defensive coordinator. Oh man, long time. Essentially, Auburn fired their head coach in Gus Malzahn, and the athletic department and the athletic director said, "Okay, we're going to do a coaching search." And the booster culture said, "No, you're not. This guy's now our head coach." And there was a huge just tornado of information in the media about, oh, they are promoting this guy to head coach now. Oh, they're not. Oh, they are. And he was like supposed head coach for like a week. And then it came out that they weren't, and they're actually going to do a coaching search, and their athletic director actually resigned, or he got fired. He left. I think he just was like, I'm out of this. Because it's wild. If you let the boosters get all that control, it can become a very dysfunctional place for your football program or athletics in general. All of that to say, if A&M does lose this game to Miami, it's going to get loud in College Station, and I am skeptical, or not skeptical. I'm excited to see the madness happen, but there's people's jobs in the front office of these college administration buildings, and they're just trying to do their job and put forward the right personnel and people in charge of the athletic programs to make things happen the right way. And you don't want to see them get railroaded over this. So we're going to watch the game. We're picking the under. But keep in mind, if A&M loses this thing, it could get pretty wild over in College Station. Last game of the night, Fresno State at University of Southern California. This is at 10:30 p.m. Late kick, I know. We'll stay up for it. Southern Cal favored by 12, as well as an over-under of 74. Another 74 total point. Another 70-plus total points game. If you haven't watched any USC, and they haven't been on the slate yet, they score a ton, and they score fast. It's basically, Lincoln Riley has completely just moved over the Oklahoma offense that he had, and just moved it to Hollywood. And Fresno scores some points, man. Now, they kicked way too many field goals against Oregon State last week. But they can move the ball. They got a quarterback in Jake Haener who's going to go in the NFL draft. I think Fresno can score enough. I think you're going to slowly see a gap, because Fresno is not going to just. I think USC could probably score on every single drive. Okay, they get like 15 drives. Maybe they score on like 13 of them. I think Fresno will not do that, but they will continue to score later into the game. It might be 10, 14-point lead in the third quarter, where USC is going to feel like they still have to like continue scoring. I don't think this is going to be just a blowout, because USC's defense isn't there. They cannot stop the run. Rice ran it on them, and Stanford last week was really running the ball effectively on Southern Cal. Just had like 4 or 3 turnovers in the red zone. But they were moving the rock. Fresno State can move the rock. They're a good team, and I expect them to do very well in moving the rock. Washington's head coach is Kalen DeBoer, first-year head coach, looking good over there. Told you I'd figure it out. Anyway, taking the over, 74. I think this game ends 40-35, maybe even both are in the 40. I could see this game with both teams getting into the 50s. USC's defense is that bad. If they end up getting takeaways, they get takeaways. What are you gonna do? But I don't think it's gonna be Jake Haener who's gonna be turning the ball over, fumbles, that kind of stuff. So taking the over there, shootout late night at 10:30. Gotta love college football. All right, so I found a couple games on the slate this week, which I'm going to just put in. I'm putting them in this category of for the lulls. These aren't games where I want to watch the whole thing, and please don't. But they're games that I think we should keep an eye on, or check the ESPN score every hour or something. Nevada is going to Iowa. I talked about Iowa. They do not score points. They have a nepotism problem at the offensive coordinator position. And they have a pretty decent defense. Nevada is a complete sieve on defense. How I've written this down, a non-functioning machine meets an extremely movable object in Nevada's defense. Now, I think Iowa's favored by like 24 points or something like that in this game. I'm not betting on it. But tune in first quarter. If Iowa is still struggling to move the ball against this Nevada team that gave up 40-plus points to Incarnate Word last week, Incarnate Word FCS program, like, they're decent-ish. No, they're not that good. I don't know what. This is another, now I don't think Iowa culture and A&M culture are a lot different in terms of how the booster organization interacts with the people actually in charge to make decisions at the Iowa Athletics Department. But, man, if I was winning this game like 10-0 at the half, woo! Oh, boy. Oh, boy. We got a lot of questions. We got a lot of questions about the future of this Iowa team and their ability to do anything in their conference. So, eyes on this game. Iowa comes out, 21 points in the first quarter. Okay. Nevada is that bad, and we knew it, and they know they're that bad, and this is a game where Iowa can kind of stretch their legs and do what they need to do to work out some kinks, I hope. As we know, this is a pro-Hawaii podcast. They play at midnight on the Big Island at home. They play Duquesne, who lost to Florida State by about 40 points. This could be Hawaii's only chance to get a win on the season. They do play New Mexico State. Maybe they can get that one. I don't know. Nobody should watch that except me. I just want to let you know that Hawaii might win a game this week. Two more. North Dakota State at Arizona. Why Arizona scheduled the FCS powerhouse that is the North Dakota State Bison, I have no idea. But Arizona has looked pretty competent. Did not think they would win week 1 against San Diego State. And last week didn't get destroyed by Mississippi State. Actually looked, they battled. They lost, but it wasn't like they lost 40-3. So at the beginning of the season, I thought this game was a big question mark, as Arizona might be 0-2 heading into this game, but they're 1-1. And maybe NDSU does not play fast, wide open. They are a power I formation, 3-2-3 tight end program. So they are just going to sit back and pound the rock at Arizona, which only helps Arizona because they're going to stay within probably a score of North Dakota State. So really, this is just Arizona. I'm putting eyes on this because I want to make sure that Arizona is checking all the boxes they need to check to kind of get back to being a halfway decent team, because they only had 1 win last year. And also, how good is NDSU this year? Is it juggernaut season again, or maybe they're taking a step back? But big FCS power headed to Power 5 team at night in the desert. We're gonna check it out a little bit. Lastly, Old Dominion at UVA. Old Dominion, as we know, beat Virginia Tech in the opener. a hilarious game where Old Dominion basically was terrible on offense until the last drive where they just threw up a Hail Mary and landed at the 1, and Virginia Tech just kept handing them points continuously. Old Dominion has a really cool thing on their schedule this year where they've scheduled Virginia Tech, UVA, and now, because they're in the same conference, James Madison. So if Old Dominion can win against UVA, they can claim the Commonwealth Super Cup, if that even exists. JMU doesn't play Virginia Tech or Virginia. Maybe they play Virginia, but they don't all four play each other, which would be awesome one year. I hope they figure that out to do a Super Cup of the Virginia. For North Carolina, that would be wild if ECU, Carolina, App State, and the 3 ACC schools all played each other. That'd be a fun time. But just because of Old Dominion scheduling is why this is so fun. That if they beat Virginia, then they'd probably have a good shot to beat James Madison in November. Could do this. Either way, I don't like Virginia. I think they're not a good team. They don't have a good offensive line. Old Dominion really isn't either, but I don't trust Virginia to beat Old Dominion they're getting 8.5. I'm taking it. If you want to bet on this game, I would take Old Dominion plus 8.5. Last LOL game of the night. And this is really just, if you want a hot betting tip, I like this one. I don't think the game's going to be good, but Minnesota is laying 28 points against Colorado at home, and Minnesota has loved to run the score up as of late. They've been all over just teams. I mean, they put up 60 plus in a game recently. They're just not afraid to just pound you into the dirt over and over and over again. And Colorado cannot pass the ball. They literally cannot. Their quarterback last week was 2 of 5 in the rain against Air Force. They do not pass the ball. Minnesota has a great defense. Take the points, put them in a parlay, do whatever you want to do with it. But that's a good tip right there. That'll do it for our week 3 setup. I want to do a quick podcast business at the tail end of the podcast here. I will be going on a 3-week road trip starting Sunday. So I will actually be going live Saturday night around 10:30, 11 o'clock. Probably more around 11 to let some of these night games settle into whatever they're going to be doing. And doing basically the week wrap-up live Saturday night. Please join me. I'd love to have as many people as possible there in the chat, throwing me questions, celebrating the day of college football that was. But I just want to let you know that the week 3 review is going to just straight up be live on Saturday night. Also, on the trip that I'm going to be going on, I'm going to 4 different college football games. Arkansas A&M in Dallas, which, if A&M loses that game, then the next week they're playing Arkansas in Dallas. That will be wild. I can't wait to see the A&M fans there. I think that's going to be awesome. Going to see USC, Arizona State in LA, and going to see Houston play Memphis in Memphis on October 5th, and then Arkansas again playing at Mississippi State in Starkville on the 7th or 8th of October. And the Memphis game's on the 7th. It's on the Friday. I'm doing a Friday, Saturday on our way back. I will be starting an Instagram for this YouTube channel for this podcast, and I'm going to be setting that up later today and be then announcing it tomorrow, and basically using the Instagram to catalog the trip as well as share with you all of the cool things we're going to be seeing. I'm actually going with my father. As well as I'm going to be going through a lot of different college football towns, and I'm going to be going onto these campuses and seeing the stadiums and whatnot. So you'll be seeing photos of all the different college football stadiums I'll be visiting, as well as videos and everything of the games and the game day atmosphere. And just, I think it'd be a really cool way to catalog the trip and share with you college football from across the country in pretty much, not going to any ACC games, but in the middle and west of the country. So please tune into that. That will be announced. The Instagram tag will be announced tomorrow. Thank you guys for joining me. This has been Mike's On College Football Podcast with your host, Mike Collins. It's going to be a great weekend this weekend, guys. So buckle up, strap in. Noon slate's a little soft, so if you need to do something, I'd do it in the morning because that noon slate's a bit of a snoozer. We looked at a couple games there, but the afternoon and evening is really where it ramps up. So get that shopping done early and tune in for some college football in the afternoon and evening. And 11 p.m. Saturday night, we are going to be live with the review. We'll see you then.